Welcome everyone. We are going to have this event we call the Podemos phenomenon and the new political practices. And we have the great luck to have three great speakers with us. Although they are not going to be the only ones speaking, we hope to have a lively debate this afternoon. So the idea for this afternoon is that our first speaker, Hilary Wainwright, who is a TNI fellow and co-editor of the Red Pepper magazine in the UK. She will give an introduction with an overview of different political practices on direct democracy of the last decades, which is a topic she has been researching. The idea is that she will have like 15 minutes for that initial introduction. Then, if there is any short clarification, the public can ask only for clarification, not like an open question. This will be later. After her, we'll have Pablo Echenique, who just arrived from Brussels, where she's a member of the European Parliament after the last European elections. She's a member of Podemos, as you might know. And she's going to explain what are the reasons that made Podemos possible, and what are the current processes that Podemos is undertaking, which are a new way of understanding politics and also to practice politics. And after him, we'll have Justus Uitermark from the University of Amsterdam and also professor at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. He has been researching social movements and its relation with the city, and he will give us another perspective to understand phenomena like Podemos. So thank you very much, the three of you, to be here. After the presentations, we will open the discussion to the public. We will try to make it as interactive as possible. So we will ask you to make short questions or comments, please. So if we have 10 or 15 inputs from the public, that will be much better. So thank you, and I give the word to Hilary now.
Isn't Garan going to say something first?
No.
Oh.
And just to you to know, we are live streaming the event, so many people from Spain is following, well, and all over Europe following this event. So yeah, you know, you can tweet about it if you want, and send it social media, which is one of our tools as well. So I give it the word to Hilary.
Okay, so well, thanks very much for you and Garan for organising this really important event. Because, well, and firstly to say congratulations to Podemos, because, you know, particularly for those of us in Britain and Holland and other countries, France, you know, where the far right has been really the party that has given expression to dissatisfaction with the political class and with imposed austerity. It was so wonderful to see that there is an alternative, you know, that can be effective and can actually win support and win votes and stop the far right from growing. So I feel this meeting is very important for all of us in Europe to learn from and really learn, and also learn from our mistakes on the left in other countries. I've been asked to give a bit of a sketch at earlier attempts to break away from the old political class and create some kind of direct democratic politics. And so I'll try and do that quite informally. It won't be an academic paper or anything. And then I'll end with maybe some questions or challenges to Pablo arising from these earlier experiences, you know, identifying some of the difficulties and the recurring failures, and ask how is Podemos able to overcome, or how does he think Podemos is going to overcome those problems. So one of the themes that comes out in many of Podemos' statements, and has a lot in common with earlier attempts to create a new left, if you like, is the whole idea of the exhaustion of of representative democracy, and the exhaustion of projects of transformation, whether the democratic transition in Spain from Franco and fascism or similarly in Portugal from Salazar and his kind of fascism, or in Britain from the welfare state, the kind of exhaustion of social democracy and the welfare state, probably similarly here in the Netherlands. This kind of sense that the old political families of the 20th century, social democracy and the whole kind of Soviet experience had failed to live up to people's hopes, had failed to provide a real alternative to neoliberal conservative politics. And so this notion of exhaustion is something that isn't new. You know, for me, I'm kind of in my mid-60s, so that means my political formation was the late 60s, early 70s, so I'm a child of 68. So that was a moment when, in a sense, a whole generation said no to the existing political forms, to representative democracy, and particularly to the idea of delegating politics to a separate political class. We wanted direct democracy, we wanted democratic universities, we wanted democracy in our everyday lives, we wanted democracy in the factories. And that was the beginnings of a kind of new thinking, which I feel has it's had many ambiguities, many different sort of journeys, but I think that there is a continuity between those aspirations and those unresolved aspirations and the emergence of Podemos and Syriza in Greece, and other developments in other parts of Europe. Maybe the Socialist Party here in Holland. It'll be interesting to hear what people think about that compared to Podemos. Because maybe one's got to remember that in those old projects, the defeat of fascism in southern Europe, the development of the welfare state and the kind of paternalistic order that represented, there was also a marginalisation of mass struggles. There were mass struggles. I mean, you know, in Spain, you know, I remember hearing about all the resistance in the neighbourhoods to Franco, to fascism. I remember going to Portugal at the time of the Carnation Revolution, the moment the soldiers refused to carry out the colonial wars, and there were every night demonstrations, workers occupying factories, peasants occupying farms. You know, there was a kind of mass uprising in Britain after the war. There were workers wanting to see much greater control in the factories, workers and soldiers collaborating in new kinds of democracy. So in a way, those old sort of, not exactly victories, but that old social democratic order, whether in Spain, southern Europe, or in northern Europe, was based in part on a marginalisation of mass aspirations, mass sort of attempts at direct democracy. So in a way, there was a kind of suppression there that in a sense wasn't successful, that meant people kind of still felt a sense of unfulfilled hopes after the defeat of fascism, hopes for something more than simply representative democracy and the delegation of politics to a political class. So in a sense, 68 represented an explosion again of that unfulfilled aspiration, and it was a kind of notion of democracy that was based on, in a way, the capacity for self-government. It's interesting that when you think of all those movements, the women's movement particularly, you know, I was very involved in the feminist movement, and crucial to that was a notion of the practical knowledge and understanding and intelligence of the mass of women. So our movement was not sort of looking to some leader out there or to some sort of expertise that would be delivered to us. We built ways of organising, we call them consciousness-raising groups, through which we shared our practical experience, you know, our experience of daily life and the oppressions of daily life. And out of that, out of our knowledge, our practical knowledge, linking it to kinds of historical knowledge and expertise, we developed our policies and our programs, which is a very different model of knowledge and power from the kind of social democratic and communist parties of the past, that presumed, in a way, the expertise of the vanguard, of the leadership, and the members were the rank and file. So they weren't, that very phrase, rank and file, it's taken from the army, a kind of subaltern idea, the membership, they're the people that march, as it were, behind the leaders. They don't have their own capacities, their own intelligence. And so there was a sort of paternalism in that old model, which the social movements of the 60s and 70s was trying to break. And so the next phase, if you like, was after the sort of victories of neoliberalism, there was a period of defeat and sort of, stunned kind of despair. But then, again, this sort of irrepressible desire for self-government, for justice, for equality, for democracy, bubbled up again in the resistance to corporate-led globalization in Seattle in '98, and the emergence of the ultra-globalization movement that many of you maybe have been part of. And again, the development of movements that were again based on sharing practical knowledge. And by now we had the whole development of ICT and the new technology, which provided a key resource for the sharing of this practical knowledge and for the possibilities of a distributed kind of initiative that was also coordinated. And then emerged parties, or parties that had split earlier from social democracy or the communist parties because they'd acquiesced to the pressures of the corporate market. And so you had Rifondazione Comunista in Italy, the SV in Norway, radical parties that saw themselves very explicitly as parties that were championing those movements. The Greens in Germany talked about themselves as the voices of the movements. So what happened? I mean, this is a long discussion which I won't go into now. And Syriza in Greece, which has many characteristics common to Podemos, very much emphasizing direct democracy, autonomy from the political system, the solidarity economy, and so on. They spent a lot of time learning, particularly from the Italian experience, what went wrong. With a party that was very radical, was very much based on the movements, but when it turned into an electoral party, it became sort of sucked into the political system. Its leader, Fausto Bertanotti, became the president of the parliamentary chamber. The party almost disappeared. All the leadership went into the parliament, and it's interesting that in the case of Podemos, actually, only one or two leaders went into the political system. Many of the leading members of Podemos, I know its history is so short, you can't really talk about any institutional forms, but most of its leaders remained outside in the movements. I mean, Pablo will talk about that more, but I think that's very important. So, 5 minutes, yes, and maybe I'll end up with some questions. So the parties of that sort of middle period, the 80s, that came from the movements, in a sense, have either disappeared almost, split, broken up, sort of become drawn back into social democracy. To some degree this has happened in Norway. You've had your experience with the Green Links, which, from what I hear, is no longer really a radical party, a party of the movements. So that experience needs to be learnt from in this new wave of parties that have come from the movements of the 21st century. And so the questions that I feel Podemos is facing, learning from those, if you like, failed experiments, because failure is never something to kind of beat your breast and cry about. It's something rich, it's something to learn from, because gains have been made, skills have been developed, knowledge has been gained. So, I think perhaps the first question I'd have is how to engage with the political system without being smothered by it. I mean, I think that perhaps looking back, the German Greens particularly, but maybe the Green Links, there's a sort of underestimation of the power of the political systems to seduce, to sort of corrupt, to pull the leadership of a radical party into the political class. I can't think of the right metaphor, but it's you need some metaphor that conveys that great, almost octopoid kind of power that the political system has. I mean, it happened to the Labour Party a long, long time ago in Britain. It's a sort of, the seduction of power, if you like. You know, the resources they have, the state gives parties that gives them a sense of privilege. You know, the privileges that MPs have, and Pablo will maybe talk more about this and how the antidotes that Podemos is thinking about developing. But anyhow, how are they going to champion the voices and the ideas and the demands and needs of the mass of people that are voted for them? After all, you know, people Podemos want these left political parties to be in the political system, but how can they remain true to, it's almost a paradox, how do they remain true to desires which actually are against that political system? So how can you be in and against, and what does that mean for your organisation? And then linked to that, how do you really build an organisation that is fully participative, fully appreciative and based on a recognition of the capacity of the people? You know, this seems crucial about Podemos, that it's been accused of populism, and I think this discussion of populism is important because, you know, I would say there's maybe a left populism, that populism needn't appeal to people's prejudices and xenophobic, negative, dark kind of instincts, but rather can appeal to people's intelligence. You know, if you think, you know, I've just got a great niece, you know, and I watch her mother, and the intelligence and the organisational capacity of a mother or of parents bringing up a kid is kind of huge. And if you just think of all the jobs that people do on which the system depends, they all require incredible intelligence. So how do you build a political party that really values that intelligence and make sure that the programme, I mean, now Podemos will be developing its programme, you know, which is a major risky thing. How will that programme really reflect that popular capacity rather than be, you know, kind of old ideas, old slogans? And how in that process can we use all the innovative possibilities of the new technology, which is so ambiguous? You know, on the one hand it's a source of profit and the massive expansion of capital and markets, but on the other hand it's a source of new organisational possibilities that I think we must think about. So those would be my two questions. So I better stop there, because it's really important to have as many contributions from the floor.
Thank you very much, Hilary, for this first introduction to the topic. I would like to give the opportunity for the public, if have a question, a clarification, not something that was not clear. Okay. Yeah, there is one clarification.
One second. But let's stand for clarification. Questions will be later.
I'm from Greece. You also talk about Syriza. Okay, let's say Syriza has come to the power, and we have a left government. Is it, you think the problem is solved if Syriza, for example, is government, in the government, if we don't have a movement to support, if Syriza wants to do something to go against the system, I don't think we're going to have any result whatsoever. Mm. So,
yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't know if we leave it for later or
Well, I could just clarify.
Okay, clarify, yes.
Yeah. No, because I do need to clarify. If you think I'm arguing that a political party of the left getting into government is going to solve the problem, obviously not. We're up against, and it gets more and more difficult, we're up against increasingly powerful, hostile forces. And so the lesson of, the failings of social democracy particularly have been exactly their reliance on management, on the private sector, on the market, and their failure to mobilise and build the capacity of their members. They've had the mass of workers supporting them, but they've never looked to those workers with all their knowledge and capacity and power to bring about change. So that's a fundamental lesson. I'd say that's absolutely lesson number one, that any radical party, whether it's Syriza or Podemos, has no chance of bringing about change unless it hasn't simply mobilised the movements to sort of vote for it, to be on the streets and so on, but has worked with the movements in the preparation for electoral office, which is only one aspect of power, electoral office, and has worked with the movements to actually develop alternatives in practice. So I think Syriza recognised this. I talked to one of the leaders, and he said only 20% of change comes through the legislative process. 80% comes through society. So as you know, they're putting a lot of emphasis on developing the solidarity economy, developing alternatives here and now. And that's been the great innovation of the movements from the 60s, including the women's movement, the way in which we want change now. But that's not an alternative to systemic change in the future. It's a preparation for that systemic change. So your point is very important.
Thank you for the clarification. I think we go now with Pablo, who will give his input to the conversation.
First of all, thank you very much to Hilary for the input. I am tempted to begin by answering the questions, but I will wait till the end. And also thank you very much to the Netherlands circle of Podemos. We call circles to our local groupings, and as you know. Most of the work, if not all, in the circles is voluntary. So I want to begin by asking anyone in the room that is willing to help change come to our society, and especially to the Netherlands, to join the Podemos circle in the Netherlands, because I am sure that our comrades in the circle have a lot of need of arms, brains, mouths, and feet. So that I wanted to begin by that. After that, I want to make a brief account of what has happened in the last months in Spain regarding Podemos and our surprising result in the European elections, and how I see it, because I must remind you that my political trajectory is very, very short. I was a full-time scientist in December. So, and when I say full-time, I mean full-time. Scientists, not only MEPs, not only members of the European Parliament is a full-time job. A scientist is also full-time. We work on Saturdays, Sundays. We even work when we are asleep sometimes. So my political life began more or less around January when Podemos started. Okay, how did Podemos start? Basically through a YouTube video. Okay. I think the microphone is going down, so I will go down. No problem. Basically, some very clever people in Madrid decided that the time was ripe for trying something brave and new in Spain, and they said so, and they explained so to the people by gathering a small theater in Madrid. I think it was on January the 16th this year, and they told us that Podemos was being born not to be the third party, not to be an ally of the Social Democrats, not to be the third violin in the orchestra, but to win the elections. That was one of the things that they told everyone, and of course there was also a manifesto signed which marked more or less the political lines. So we know that these people was proposing to us an audit of the public debt, redistribution, a real redistribution of wealth, a lot of things that we agree on, a lot of people agree upon, and that they would begin by asking in the internet if people felt that this was good and necessary. So they asked for 50,000 signatures in the internet, and they gave like 2 weeks for gathering the signatures, and in one afternoon, with the web page going down all the time because of the traffic, they doubled that bid, and in the end, more than 100,000 people signed that they wanted Podemos to start working and to try to do what they were saying that Podemos would try to do. I saw that video. As I said, between scientific paper and scientific paper, I watched that video and I thought I like this. Okay, I thought it's shameful that in rich Europe there are people who needs to look for food in the garbage containers, who is evicted from their homes, which people who cannot turn on the heating in winter, and not only is shameful, but it's unnecessary. We can do better, and we must do better. So, of course, as Hilary mentioned, this feeling is an old feeling. We all knew that for a long time. But for the first time, we saw a tool for bringing about this change. And many of us, when I always say that when my brain clicked and I saw that this might work, after that click, it was impossible for me not to spend all my time and effort in trying to make it happen. After that click happened in my brain, and the rest is on the newspapers. After 2 weeks, the next public calling from Podemos in a very crowded theater room in Madrid, in which I was for the first time speaking. We asked people to spontaneously form Podemos circles, and now there is about 1,000 of them. Most of them in Spain, but a lot of them outside the borders of Spain, such as the one in the Netherlands, also in Shanghai, in Ecuador, all over the world. We don't have a Podemos circle in the moon yet, but we only have to wait enough time for that to happen, and that was amazing. And then we started working for the European elections, because the European elections were the first one to come about, and we did 2 things in order to prepare ourselves for the European elections. We elected our candidates by open primaries. We moved tables and laptops to the streets so that everyone could vote, not only people that has a connection to the internet or people that came to the assemblies. We did that in the street. We announced it as loud as we could with our limited means. Thousands of people voted in the primaries, and that put an order to the list of candidates to the European elections. We also opened the program to society. There was a starting draft of the program, and then all the Podemos circles began to discuss in the assemblies all the program, drafting amendments to it, proposing changes, fusions, deletions, additions, whatever. I can tell you because I was part of the discussion in the circle of my town, and we spent a lot of time talking about the program and proposing changes. After that, we asked again everyone to vote the amendments, to say if they liked the original text or the new one, which in a way tried to gather all the amendments. Most of the times the new one was the one that won the vote. And then the elections came. We started to campaign. I was fifth in the primaries, and we decided that in order not to spend a lot of resources, 5 phases was the phases that we were going to move around the country mostly, although every circle participated in the campaign, but mostly the 5 highest, most voted people. And we traveled a lot. We slept too little. We ate very badly, and as the elections were approaching, we saw in the streets that every day we gathered more and more people. Our events were gathering thousands of people in the end of the campaign. Pablo Iglesias, who is the head of the list in the European elections, always said that if we had 1 week more, then the result would have been even more amazing, and I completely agree with him. At the moment that the Sunday that the elections came, we were growing very fast, and the rest of the parties knew that, and we also knew that because we saw it in the street. And then, well, we got 1,250,000 votes in Spain, and that that made possible that 5 members of the European Parliament at the moment are Podemos members of the European Parliament, which is very nice because I think that the European Parliament has never seen before people like us coming into the camera, which is it's fun and it's very enjoyable. Okay. So yes, now we are. This has been frantic. We are running very fast. We plan to keep running fast because we have punched these guys in the stomach and they are out of air and they are gasping for air, and we will not let them get their breath back. Okay, so we'll keep punching because that's the way of winning this. And we have many challenges ahead, as Hilary has explained. We need not to be sucked up by the political system. The way we are proposing to do that is to remain close to the people, and one way of doing that is earning a normal salary, which is what we do at the moment. We don't earn the 6,200 per month that a parliamentary earns, but we earn 3 times the minimum wage in Spain, which is 2,000 more or less per month. The rest of it we donate to Podemos and to social movements, and also to limit the duration of the mandates. We don't want to be professional politicians. I want to go back to science, and I will go back to science, and I think that's very healthy. And thinking that you will go back makes you think in another way. If you think that what you are doing is forever, it's a career, then you start to think in a different way. If you think this is only for a time, then I will go back to my job, to my usual life, to my usual job, then you think in another way. And of course, we want to be controlled by the people. We want that the people has the power to revoke us, to ask us questions, to ask us for transparency, that they tell us, what do you do with the money? What have you voted in the parliament? Why have you voted that? We want that, and we think that's very healthy, and we will do everything to make that possible. And yeah, these are our answers to that questions. I don't know if they will work, but I hope they will. And if they start to fail, we will change the method, and we will make it work in the end. I am sure of it. I liked very much what Hilary said about left populism. I think that's the key of Podemos. We are not treating people as underaged. We appeal to their intelligence. Everyone talks about the media success of Pablo Iglesias, and I always said that yes, the success is enormous, and the most surprising thing and the most remarkable thing about the success is that Pablo has succeeded by speaking quietly, with arguments, with the truth, and trying to make everybody understand what the fuss is about. Okay, instead of using I don't know, simple sentences and easy arguments, he has appealed to the complexity of people's minds, and everyone was waiting for that. People was fed up with being treated as stupid, which is what the old politicians do, treat people treat people as stupid. And we know positively that people is not stupid. Quite the other way around. People is extremely intelligent, has an enormous amount of common sense, especially about what they do every day, about their job, about their families, about the way the neighborhood works, and not appealing to that and not using that social intelligence to bring about change is itself very stupid. Our governing class is so detached from reality that they are not at all efficient in trying to modify it, because they simply don't know it. So they rely on the advice of great corporations, sometimes because it's the only advice they have in hand. How to gather this social intelligence is very difficult. We're trying to do so using a combination of face-to-face discussions and assemblies and technological tools that were not available 20 years ago. I think we are doing fine, but this is an experiment, and we are all the time trying to produce new tools and new ways of doing that. And I am sure that in the round of questions, we can talk more about this, which is, I think, one of the key points in the future of Podemos. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Pablo.
Is there any clarification needed after his contribution? There will be time for questions later, so don't worry. Okay, then I just give the word to Justus to present.
Thank you very much. First, a disclaimer. When I received your invitation to speak here, it was the first time I heard something about Podemos. So I have no idea about the party. I learned a little bit about it just reading the internet, but I'm mostly here to learn about the party and to enter into a dialogue. So what will be the nature of that dialogue? I think one thing that is interesting is that the Netherlands sort of represents the mirror image of Spain in many ways. In the 1960s and 1970s, left movements had great momentum in the Netherlands. They were challenging power. They were very present in Amsterdam. And if you look at the situation today, it's a mirror image. It's reversed. Right-wing parties are on the rise. They have momentum. And I think you can see in the Netherlands all the processes that Hilary described. Left-wing activists, movements have been co-opted. And yes, this is a process of being seduced, of incorporating the leaders, but it's also a little bit more pervasive and also perhaps a little bit more attractive than that. Indeed, there have been many gains made since the 1960s and 1970s. So if you look at the conditions in the Netherlands and Spain, they are really very different. So if you look at poverty levels, poverty levels are way lower in the Netherlands than in Spain. If you look at, for instance, housing rights, they have become firmly established in the Netherlands in contrast to Spain. So to answer the question I'm supposed to answer today, no, I don't think that it's very likely that we will see Podemos sort of mobilizations in the Netherlands. But that's in a way a rather boring conclusion, and I would like to dwell on 2 points, and these 2 points have something to do with my experience and understanding of the Netherlands, but also with movements more generally. And the first point has to do with the paradox of self-organization. Now, I've been reading up a little bit about Podemos, and one thing that immediately strikes you if you read up on Podemos is the presence of Pablo Iglesias. He's the leader, he's very prominent, he's visible everywhere. So this is somewhat of a paradox, considering that this is a bottom-up movement, that it is highly self-organized. And I think it is a paradox that has to be confronted. And I think the paradox is not unique to Podemos. I think the paradox can be found in many sort of self-organizing systems, that there is extreme power concentration. And this is true of a self-organizing system like the economy or the internet, but you can also see it in political parties. So the challenge then is in finding a sort of acceptable logic of agglomeration. Now this sounds somewhat complicated, but for those of you who experienced Occupy at Dam Square, at the Beursplein, you know what I mean. Occupy gathered there and they had the idea that everybody should have their say. Everybody should be allowed to voice their opinions, and from this would emerge a consensus. Now this resulted not in a very revolutionary consensus, but rather in a very conservative consensus. Let me give just one example from my personal experience. I came to the meetings once and I asked, I wonder if the human mic is really necessary. They had adopted the human mic from New York, but actually in the Netherlands it wasn't necessary to use the human mic. So they said, okay, well, if you don't want to use the human mic, you can make a proposal to the meeting. And you can ask the people if they don't want to use a human mic. And if they all agree, then we will stop using the human mic. Now, so obviously I didn't do that, because if I would have gone to the meeting, they would have used the human mic to communicate my point about the human mic. So there was a very conservative consensus that very little things could be decided and very few things could be reverted. Now I'm very interested in the example of Podemos, because I hear that your program was collaboratively written. So I think that's very interesting, and especially because it requires you to make choices, to say, okay, those things will not go into the program. So it requires you to suppress certain ideas and to suppress certain voices. And I think that is a problem that we need to face head on. If you want to build a movement from the bottom up, if you want to collaborate, how are you going to legitimately repress certain voices? And I understand that there were special synthesis teams that did this. So I really wonder how those work, and this is a genuine question. So I really wonder how you solved that paradox. So this is about the logic of agglomeration. How do you put many different voices together and speak with one voice and decide on one direction? Another part of having a grassroots bottom-up movement is having grassroots in the first place. So I want to speak, as my second point, a little bit about the localization of politics, about the embeddedness of politics in everyday life. Now, if you navigate Amsterdam, you will see it is a very clean, very well-ordered city. You might even call it sterile. It is not a very fertile place for politics. And this used to be totally different in the 1970s and 1980s. There was a large infrastructure of social centers, community centers, neighborhood groups that were all mobilizing. So when we answer the question, what is different about the Netherlands and Spain, I think one thing that is crucially different is the way in which local politics is constructed. Hilary already alluded to the neighborhood-based movements against the fascist regime. And when I look from the Netherlands to Spain, I find it remarkable that politics is so local. And this is also true for movements like the 15M movement. I have seen several analyses in scientific papers, and they looked at tweets, like who tweets to whom in this movement. And then if you do community detection, if you see who belongs to which group, you find that even this sort of online traffic is heavily localized. You see people meeting together in their spaces. And also something interesting I found was the letter delivering campaign that Podemos did. So they delivered letters to people and they physically did it. Volunteers did it. So I just want to read a little fragment from that letter. This letter did not reach you by post, because mailing a letter like this all over the country costs over 2 million euros. Ask the parties who sent you an election letter by post where they got the money to do so, and in exchange for what. We don't ask for favors from bankers or corrupt politicians, and we publish all our accounts on the web. If you are reading this, it is because somebody who lives near you wants to change things for real. So I think that is a very attractive and a very stimulating idea that this is very much a local process. And if you look at the election results of Podemos, you also see very clear strongholds. Now, why is this important? It is important if you want to understand movement dynamics, which I want to do as a scholar, but I also think it has great strategic importance. Because what starts happening once you create a national political power? National political powers have major centralizing tendencies. They sap local resources. They sap local energies. And as one activist said in the 15M movement, I wonder how long it will take for some people to stop doing things for themselves and start expecting Pablo Iglesias to do it for them. And I think this is a very important warning, because since this person, Pablo Iglesias, is so prominent, it may make it seem as if you need to focus on the media, as if you need to focus on national politics and the European Parliament. And I would want to argue that actually, if you would do that, if you would succumb to that temptation, then you would lose actually what makes the party and the movement so powerful in the first place, which is this local infrastructure. So I just wanted to raise these 2 points about the logic of agglomeration and about the importance of the localization of politics. And I really wonder how Podemos deals with those 2 challenges.
Thank you. Thank you, Justus. That were very interesting questions. We have some questions on the table already, but I think it would be really great to open the floor to the public to give some inputs. So, Garam from the Podemos here in the Netherlands is going to manage the micro. So, if you have a question or a remark, please raise your hand and you will have the possibility. We ask you to make it short so we have as many inputs as possible. So we are going to collect maybe 3-4 comments and then we will give the possibility to our guests to respond. Yeah. So anyone wants to intervene from the public? I have one there, one there.
Oh, sorry.
There are 2 there.
Bueno, gracias a todos por la organización, por el esfuerzo de organización en todo esto. Gracias a Pablo por venir por aquí. Espero que no sea la última vez, serás siempre bienvenido. Y no estamos tan lejos de Bruselas, así que igual hay más oportunidades en el futuro de viajar y tener una línea de comunicación ahí. Sigo con mucha atención y con mucho interés toda la información sobre Podemos y me gustaría tener más información sobre 3 puntos en particular. Uno es la realidad del trabajo en el Parlamento Europeo. Si nos puedes contar un poco más cómo trabajáis entre los 5, cómo os coordináis, cuáles son las prioridades en la agenda, cómo repartís los temas, etc. 2, las próximas elecciones en la perspectiva de municipales, autonómicas, generales, ¿qué pensáis sobre eso? Y 3, el aspecto organizativo, las diferentes propuestas de organización más centralizadas o más locales, etc. Gracias.
Gracias. One clarification. We had translation from English to Spanish, but not to Spanish to English.
Oh, sorry. I assume we have it both ways.
We can solve that apparently. So
I can say the same in English if you wish.
yes. So we have two options, or those that don't speak Spanish now get a headset, right? We can do that. Or we can translate the questions to English when they are done. Maybe
That would be a good idea.
maybe it's here that, no?
Okay, because we've missed, even if we've got one of these, we've missed it.
We are going to give you the turn again.
Okay.
Let me give it a try. I was just asking additional information on 3 precise points. The first one is the reality of the daily work in the European Parliament, how you organize yourselves, what are the priorities and the agendas, and so on, how do you do your job in Brussels. The second one is the perspective of the forthcoming elections in a few months or a year's time, which is local and then autonomical and then general and so on. And the third question is about the internal debate, or the debate, the open debate actually, about different organizational models. You know, I gather there are mainly 2 proposals. One is a little more centralized, shall we say, and the other one is more local. And what are your views about that? Thank you.
There.
There's another question, then they can understand, give an answer, all of them. Someone have a question?
That's all right.
You? Okay, start from this way and then I go to you.
Hi. Okay, I have a question open for the 3 conferences, for the 3 ponents, and then one a bit more specific for I'm happy to see that the new age politics are driving closer to the people, and that people are more participating into the decisions. But I'm a bit worried that in that kind of working, then we can lose the whole perspective, and especially now in this time of huge crisis, people can forgive about the whole picture and think a bit more about their direct problems. So completely, I'm thinking about that now that there are so many social problems and unemployment, housing, all this. For example, issues like environment are not the first priority for a lot of people, because of course having a house and having some food is more important. So I would like to know which is your opinion in general. Do you think this kind of movements, of course we have to take for granted that people are aware and responsible in their decisions, but do you think they are gonna be responsible enough to take these decisions and in long term take decisions that are gonna be good for them, especially in the environmental aspects?
Turn to Vita answer?
Yeah, if there is no one.
Yeah?
Okay.
I think somebody
Who wants to take what?
I can start if you want, because Junior's also, Justus also asked a lot of. That keeps going down. I cannot go downer. Downer is not proper English, I know. Okay. Yeah, let's proceed. Okay. Yeah, I will try to be fast because there is a lot of questions. I will start by the very interesting questions put up by Justus. First, the concentration of power in Podemos. Apart from being a bottom-up movement in a sense, because as I said, there are 1,000 circles of Podemos, so that's undeniable. We possibly have more people activated than any other party in Spain. So I think that's impossible to deny. But it's also true, as Justus said, that we have put a lot of weight in the faces of Podemos. That's, in my understanding, That's because we are pragmatists. We want to win, and we know that a face is something that people can relate to easily. And of course, we could have tried to do this without powerful faces in the media, but then we would have lost. So, in this sense, we don't see it as a concentration of power. As a matter of fact, there is no direction of Podemos at the moment, but as a tool. Pablo himself always says this, that he is a tool, and that the need for a public face is actually a weakness, of a starting weakness, because now we are growing very strong. But at the beginning, it only showed our weakness, that we had to rely so much on one person in the media. So yeah, there is a duality there, and I am hopeful that in the future there will be no such need, because the movement will be powerful enough to need it, because we will always need it, but not in such a strong way as now. And Pablo will be able to have more free time, which he actually needs. About the collaborative program, I wasn't a part of the integration of the amendments on the collaborative program, but as the comrade over there has asked, I am part of a team that has proposed organization model for Podemos, and we posted it on the internet 2 weeks ago, more or less, 20 days ago, and we asked people to send amendments through email or on Reddit, where the draft was published. How did we put the amendments in? How did we do it? Which I assume is more or less the same as the team in charge of the program did. I can imagine. I don't know for certain, but I can imagine it's similar. We read all the amendments. That was the hard part of the work, because there were more than 100, and we discussed each amendment in the team, and prompted by the amendments, we introduced some important changes in the document, but always having in mind the need to keep the coherence of the document, which is something that cannot be atomized, cannot be separated into parts. So there has to be some team including the changes, because otherwise you lose coherence in the end. The document must be, especially an organizative document, must be coherent. And then some other amendments, we simply decided that they were not pertinent, or that they were contradictory with what we thought was the spirit of the document. I completely agree with Justus that one of the most difficult parts of participative democracy is the writing of documents. I think that's a very tough technical problem, and at the moment I have some proposals of how to do that, but they might be too technical at the moment. I think that neither the writing of the starting program nor the inclusion of the amendments in our organizative document has been perfect. I think that it has to be improved so that every voice can count, but not in a destructive way, so that the final document is useless. So yeah, I think that's a very, very tough problem, and your question there is amazingly precise. About the letter that you said that we sent, I only wanted to say that my wife and I put a lot of that letters in the mailboxes of our neighbors. I think that was a very nice move. And about the last point in Justus' speech, which I want to say something about, is there is a fact in a danger in people thinking that Podemos is the magical solution. Okay, I had a problem before. I was poor. I was evicted from my house. I was on the streets fighting to stop this. But now, Podemos is here, and they will save me. I don't have to do anything else. Finally, I can rest. I can enjoy life and wait for Pablo and all the rest of Podemos to solve my problems. I think that that's a real issue, and we have the obligation of keeping asking people what they think, asking them to help us, to join us, to work with us, because otherwise that danger can become real and we can pull people out of the streets, which is exactly what we don't want to happen. So yeah, that's another very big problem, and the only solution I can think at the moment is ask people. For example, if we are going to vote something in the parliament, tell them, I will vote what you say. Send me your answers by this technological tool after a debate, and then I vote that. Or I want to do a special proposal about the changing the energetic model in Spain. Send me proposals. We will receive everything you send to us. Then we will submit them to vote, and asking people to do things. There is one tool which we are trying at the moment, which is AppGree. I don't know if you know the tool. It's you can install them in your mobile phones, and it allows to not only to answer questions. If I am talking with 1,000 people, I can not only ask. They can not only ask questions to me, but I can ask questions to them. And the application has a very clever algorithm for giving me back the answer that had the most consensus, and it can do so in 2 minutes. So that's amazing. I can ask 1,000 people, what do you think I should ask Jean-Claude Juncker in 5 minutes? And then they propose answers. They themselves vote for the best answers, and I receive the best answer from 1,000 minds, which is, in the end, it will be certainly a good question. So I can do it confidently. I think that could be one of the options, but I am not completely sure about that. Now, answering to our comrade in the back, how is life in the European Parliament? It's horrible. I mean, we are normal people. We are, at the same time that we are working in the Parliament, we have needed to find a home, to buy groceries at the supermarket, to do all the paperwork, and we are new, so it's horrible. At the moment, we are trying, of course, to prioritize our agendas. I am very interested in energy topics, in disability topics, but at the moment, our agenda is a wild animal that is in the process of being tamed, but has not yet been completely tamed. We are doing some breakthroughs about that, but it's still a bit wild. Okay, the elections, that's another very complicated topic, and we are debating that at the moment. There are a lot of strategies, and I don't have a strong opinion about that, but if I had to produce one, I would say that with the safeguards that the situation requires, we should try to win every possible piece of power everywhere in Spain, in the institutions, in the media, in the productive system, because our enemies, that's what they do. So if we say, no, we will wait for a tactical reason not to grab this piece of the territory, they will happily grab it. So in my opinion, we should try to take away all that we can from them. Of course, we must be very careful because we are very young, and there are some circles which are very young, and some of them are not healthy in a democratic sense. So we have to have a way to see which are those unhealthy pieces of our movement. But I think it's a minority of them. Okay, but yeah, it's a complicated question. I think that it needs more debate. About the organization, I don't know if you all know it, but Podemos doesn't have an organization, which is, it might seem amazing, but it is the truth. We are in the process of creating one, okay? And as everything we have done, this process is open and participatory. So anyone that has wished to do so has presented a proposal for how he or she or them or they think that Podemos should be organized. And there is a proposal by Pablo and some other people. There is a proposal by a team and myself, and there are, I think, 40 more than ours, only that our face is always on the television, so we have the unfair opportunity to defend our proposal more than the rest of the people. But there are a lot of interesting proposals which have not been written by my team, but the team I am part of, or Pablo's team. So yeah, and there are a lot of differences. Possibly our proposal is one of the proposals that claim the highest level of participation. I think that's one of the distinctions, maybe between our proposal and the rest of proposals. I myself have a great confidence in the capability of people for taking good decisions. So I think it's a brave bet. I think it's a bet, but Podemos is a bet. The whole of it is a bet. And so betting hard, I think it's one thing that we have to do, and our proposal is betting hard, is betting high, but I trust that we can win the bet if we bet hard and bet for high participation. And the last question from the girl in the back, which I think is a very interesting question. Indeed, when you take matters to a local level and you ask to the people who is facing the local problems, you might lose the big picture, and that's dangerous. For example, the issue of the environment is obvious. It's almost impossible to detect climate change at your local level. It's something abstract for you unless you live in a region where there is a drought or there is a famine. something like that. But if you live in Amsterdam, you might think that this summer has been hotter than the previous one, but you don't know if it's your mind playing tricks on you or if it's climate change. So how do I see that working? Because I think that being true shouldn't be an alibi for retiring the decision power from the people. So how do I see it working? I think that the task of the people that has the whole picture in their minds is never to decide, always to explain it. So if there is an expert in climate change, he should come out of the university department. I've worked a lot of years in the university, and it's very comfortable there. So it's hard to get out and to explain what you are doing to normal people, to common people, but it's an obligation of academics. So if you are an expert in climate change, one of your obligations should be to explain in the simplest possible terms what would be the effects in the short term, in the mid-term, in the long term, to your life, to your personal life, what would be the effects of climate change. And I think if we do that bravely and intelligently, everyone can understand even whole picture problems. Again, as you can see, I am completely from the optimistic branch of Podemos. But I think that I am not wrong. I think that I am optimistic, but I think what I am saying is not completely wrong or too utopic. Thank you very much, and sorry for the length.
Thank you. I see some hands raised already. I would like to give the short chance to our other speakers to talk if they want. They want to comment, or we get some...
No, I'd rather carry on with questions.
Yes.
Okay, we go for some questions.
I want to ask something about the organization. You were talking about like 1,000 circles, talking about circles. These circles, how are they organized? I mean, are these circles in companies, in factories, or in neighborhoods, or you have a strategy for this, or is just people coming together and make a circle? That's my question.
You talked about the participatory democracy, and it's amazing how you are building up this in Spain. In Greece, it's not such a case. But I'm wondering, we want to have this nice participatory democracy. Can we apply it, or are we allowed to apply it? My experience from Greece is not. Democracy, as you know, in Greece is so much limited. So, not because we don't want it, because the movement doesn't want it. Of course, the movement has quite a few problems there. But we're not allowed to apply democracy because we are forced not to take, for example, measures against the unemployment, against the fact that people are losing their houses, against the fact they don't have money even to eat. So I'm wondering how we are going to reverse the consequences of this system. We need to build certainly a huge and big movement. How we are going to force the system to listen to us? Because it's not so easy. We have to build another economy. to make people have jobs. We have to have another economy, so we are not forced to dismantle our social services. How a movement like yours, for example, is going to address these issues? How is going to take the decision to take the conflict and put up with the consequences, if there are going to be consequences, of course. So, how do you think about that?
Take some more questions, I think.
Yes, I have 2 points I wanted to make to address the issue of how you can prevent that the party gets incorporated within the system. I think 2 things are very important: that you use Parliament in order to mobilize for the streets and in order to subordinate your work for the movement. And another thing is very important, I think, that you also organize people in the workplaces and that you don't accept the limitation or the division between politics on the one hand and economy on the other, and that you also start to organize people in workplaces. Because I think also this Syriza project also gives some examples about the dangers also of this parliamentary project without also having roots in neighborhoods, having roots in workplaces, where you see that because there's not a lot of action going on, Tsipras, the leader of Syriza, is starting writing letters to the Financial Times in order to say, well, there's no problem when we will be in power, everything will be managed very efficiently. You see that they're also calling off strikes, so they go against the unions there. So there's a danger, I think, and you need to get the balance right. A second thing I wanted to raise was to say something about the Netherlands. I think that in certain aspects it's a mirror image. I mean, in the Netherlands you see the Socialist Party moving to the right because there's not a political struggle going on, there's not a high level of struggle, and because of it, in Amsterdam, for example, the Socialist Party, which is the most left party in the Netherlands, is cooperating together with, the Conservatives and the Liberals. I mean, they're even skipping the Social Democrats. So this is very, it's very different. And I think it's important to see how also nationalism and racism in the Netherlands prevent people to some extent to come in, and they don't come to the streets, they don't join in actions, they're not mobilizing because they think the problem is the refugee on the corner or the Muslim going to the mosque next street. So I think that limits the movement, but at the same time, I think it also can change very rapidly in the Netherlands. I mean, it's also rising unemployment, the housing is also getting worse and worse. So this is also, we should be open about it. I mean, it could also be possible in the Netherlands.
I think we had
one more and then...
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this nice debate. I have a question for Hilary. I believe that democracy as a tool is not a solution for every single problem. And then, for example, in the case of science, and not the way of organizing science, but science itself is not a democratic process. Or, for example, to respect the minorities in a decision for the whole country or something. So could you, what's your opinion, the three of you, on what can be vote, and who decides who takes these decisions, and if you could elaborate the role of democracy in decision making, filtering proposals, and also as a corruption, anti-corruption control or mechanism, and in particular for Pablo, like if I disagree with anything that you did on Monday, how could I revoke you? Thank you.
Okay, there are quite some interesting aspects on the table. There were one related to Hilary, one to Pablo, and maybe to Justus to comment. I don't know if you want to pick up one directly already. Maybe Hilary?
Well, after Pablo.
After too much. I prefer them.
Here they go.
Well, your question about democracy was a big one. So I need other people to contribute. But you start by saying science isn't democratic. But I'm not sure about that, because in some ways science is perhaps particularly democratic. I mean, if you think about it, the most kind of creative, most developed scientific processes are those that are open. I mean, in a way, the whole the whole necessity to experiment, to draw on many different ideas, and to test which it makes most sense is an aspect of democracy. I mean, you know, I'm not sure that I agree with you that science isn't democratic. You know, that in a sense, a scientific institution that closes itself, you know, that is governed by an elite and ignores the knowledge of the people, the practical knowledge, the knowledge of those engaged in experiment, is often a very dead, very, you know, unproductive science or scientific institution. And the scientific institution that's very open, that's very alert to new developments, new paradigms, in a way, the whole idea of paradigm change, you know, the idea of, you know, experiments outside of the dominant paradigm, developing, being encouraged. You know, scientific development and revolutions only happen if there are autonomous, I mean, Pablo will know more as a scientist. I'm not speaking as a scientist, just observing science. So, you know, the more there's conditions for experiments in alternative ideas that challenge the dominant paradigm, the more scientific development, the more dynamic scientific development will be. That's just a point about science and the need for plural sources of knowledge. You know, in a way, I can't think of a good example, but a scientific process that recognises intuition. You know, if you think of, you know, often science is described as if it's free of emotion and intuition, but actually, you know, most scientists are always having hunches, kind of sitting in their baths and thinking, fuck me, you know, this is how we should do it. You know, there's lots of, you know, if you think of many innovations, it's like, well, Isaac Newton watching an apple drop. He was just probably having a snooze and then woke up and saw an apple drop and thought, you know, gravity. I mean, so there's sort of hunches and emotions and instincts in the process of scientific development. So there's got to be that alertness to a wider process than simply a very monistic kind of scientific notion of expertise. So I think, if you think what is democracy, it's the kratos of the demos, you know, it's the power of the people. So it has to be based on this notion of people's capacities. So I think I really admire what Pablo's been saying in his insistence on the capacity of the people. You know, if you don't believe in the capacity of the people, then forget democracy. You know, and the capacity of the people is often very, it's kind of dormant. There's a very classic statement by Tom Paine, where he said that in moments of revolution, you see expressions of genius by the people that are normally completely dormant and go with those people to the grave. And it's true, if you think of any movements you've been involved in. I mean, I remember the movement of the women supporting the miners' strike, and they're in Britain against Thatcher. And, you know, they were women who normally were not speaking in public. You know, quite the mining communities were quite sort of enclosed, and the women were given had a very private role. And suddenly, as the strike developed, the women felt, this is our strike, it's our communities. And they got massively involved, and they created a movement. And they were speaking every night. They were travelling the country, travelling internationally. And those women couldn't believe themselves. You know, they became public speakers, they became political people overnight, and had a huge capacity. You know, it's just obvious. So that capacity is crucial. Now, there's certain, maybe every organisation has to be different. You know, maybe an organisation has to think what is its purpose and how does democracy work in relation to that purpose. I mean, I edit, I'm a co-editor now, but each issue of Red Pepper is edited by somebody because, you know, editing a magazine effectively can't be done by committee. So you could say, well, it's not democratic. But the kind of, we've tried to develop a democracy, you know, so that the readers, the supporters all have a real influence. So we rotate. So I'm not, I was the founding editor, but I'm not the editor. We have 5 editors and we take it in turns. So that way, actually, we increase our capacity and our knowledge. But we do have that principle that there needs, you know, the week of production. There needs to be one person who can say, yes, that'll be the cover, or yes, I'm going to write the editorial, but discusses it with everybody else. So I think democracy can take many forms. So one shouldn't fetish one form, one should relate it to purpose. Because if it's about popular control of power, power has got a purpose. Anyway, so I don't want to waffle on, but I would have more faith in democracy than I think you do. But I would also recognise its complexity.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about big questions here, no? Because democracy many times means different things for different people. The reality is that in Europe there is a loss of democracy. Many of the democratic processes that we were used to don't exist anymore in certain countries, like in countries that are under a Troika memoranda, in Greece, Portugal, Ireland. They are not able to choose their own economic policies anymore. In Italy, the European Union elected the president of the country. And this process is just getting worse. There is a new wave of legislation at the European level that is basically putting all the limits for democratic decision making. So that's the reality nowadays in Europe. That's why there are many social movements in different countries trying to connect internationally, because there is this need for international coordination. And we can go even further. There are big moves at the international level, like the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which will allow multinational corporations to sue governments that apply policies that can undermine their benefits. So we can be in very little time in a world where democracy will have a completely different meaning as we are used to. So to make the connection, because to talk a bit more about the Netherlands, because I think it's very relevant to talk about Netherlands and North Europe. There has been talk about South-North Europe, the differences, the impossibility that North European countries mobilize the same as the South European countries. There are different economic situations, political cultures, but it's true that there is a huge rise of precarity in Netherlands. In Germany, for instance, 20% of the people is under poverty line. And this needs to be clarified, because there is this constant process of precariousness, especially for the new generations, where you can get a contract of one day, which is something that years ago was completely out of question. So we will need some, well, I don't want to talk too much, but to make a bit the question around this need for international cooperation between these new expressions, like in Syriza, Podemos are the strongest one, but more will come. There will be need in the North European countries to support those movements, to organize the resistance. If, for instance, Syriza goes into power and decides we are going to do an audit on the debt, and we are going to don't pay what part of the debt, or Podemos in Spain, there will be a huge media campaign in the North European countries saying these lazy southerners, they don't work and they don't want to pay the debt. So these are huge problematics. So how this will affect Netherlands society? I'm going to you, Justus. What do you think could happen in that situation if there could be increase in nationalism in the Netherlands, like we are the North Europeans and we are smarter, so we don't want to follow this radical Southerners. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I think that is the current response, the current dominant response. I just want to clarify, I don't think that something like Podemos is likely in the Netherlands. But I agree with you that we also shouldn't preclude the possibility entirely. But then, of course, the process will not be entirely replicated. It is conceivable that a left-wing party will win so many votes and people will be amazed by it. But then still it is a question, where does that party draw its power from? And in that respect, I would want to go back to the grassroots, to autonomous spaces of politics, because I think if you want to give a response to crisis conditions, you need a space to think about a discourse. You need a network to develop certain ideas. You need to try to test out ideas with people in your environment. And this is lacking at present in the Netherlands. And I would say that to build a response the way you describe would require a lot of local effort. You would need to start in a barren wasteland. Because the Netherlands is a barren wasteland when it comes to radical left-wing politics and radical imaginations. And I think places like this are a good place to start, to build up some sort of institutions, to have debates about specific topics, so that when a certain debate emerges, there are people who are capable of responding in a certain debate, of providing also somewhat edgy and new political discourses. And yeah, in that respect, a lot of work is still to be done, and I think that work would need to be done from the ground up.
Thank you for that. We have officially 12 minutes to go. We can be, yeah, we would like to be longer here, but there will be an option to continue discussion downstairs. So, do you want to intervene now, or we get some?
I can mention some things.
Okay.
That have been.
Yes, and there are some questions before. Yeah, so agreed to you.
Yeah, as Sol said, the exact level of democracy is a tough question, but what's clear is that the present level of democracy is not enough. So I think we should aim for more and not for less. Science is democratic in a sense. The decisions about what topic do you work in are completely given to the intuition and the majority of the scientific community. You can decide what to do, how to work, but normally the hottest topics in science are decided by the community. Of course, science is not democratic in a way, which is that the answers that nature gives back to you are not subject to votation. In that sense, it's undemocratic. But you are free to choose the questions you ask to nature, in a sense. So yeah, I think it's complicated, and I think that in politics we also have the same dichotomy. On the one hand, you have to choose in the most democratic possible way what you do, what are the proposals, what are your desires, your needs. And then there is a technical phase in which you have to decide what is possible and what's not possible. And there are some things, there are some constraints that the material world puts on you, which doesn't allow you to do anything you want to do. And the balance is also very tricky in that dichotomy, but again, the present balance is wrong. The guys in power, they are always telling us that this is impossible because a report that I have in my hands here, you can see it, says it's impossible. And 99% of the times, that's bullshit. That's a report somebody made for them in order to have to contain the conclusions that they wanted to be in the conclusions page. So, yes, there is a technical side of doing politics and doing government, but it is not so big as they want us to believe. It's much smaller, and we shouldn't allow to be governed by technicians. There is a larger part of the decisions that must be submitted to the will of the people, because the present balance is completely unfair in that sense, even if there will always remain a place for the technical issues. Especially, I mean, climate change was brought about before, the production of energy. That's a highly technical matter, but still it's not as technical as they want us to believe. For example, you can nationalize an energy production enterprise firm, and that's basically a political question, not a technical one. So yeah, there are some things which are more difficult to decide democratically, but much more than they claim usually in the media. About the institutions, the girl from Greece was asking. I think that states are very powerful. In Spain, 44% of the expenditure of the gross national domestic product is in the hands of the state, of the Spanish state. And Spain is not a country that is the highest on the list of public spending. So the state is very powerful. So we in Podemos, at least, I think that the state can be a tool of mobilization if you use it properly. You have a lot of tools to try to mobilize people. The media is a tool, and we have been very effective in assaulting the media. We must be more effective, but we have been very effective. And I think that the state is possibly the most powerful tools. Sometimes, most of the times, the ideas come from the people, but you can also do a lot of good things if you are sitting in the chair of the president of a nation state. So, in my opinion, what we should do in the parliaments of Europe is first take them and then change them. But we cannot. It's very difficult from a pragmatist point of view to say I am going to change the whole system of government without having any seat in the parliament. I would say, okay, well, I will let you try, but I don't think that's really possible. I think that the only realistic way of doing that is first getting the parliament, then changing the political system. And I think that's Podemos' plan. Although it's very difficult to speak from Podemos because there is not a single voice in Podemos, but at least that's my opinion. And the last one, how you can revoke me. I am reading the ethical compromise I signed when I presented myself to the primaries, because that's when we signed it, and there is not a point about revocation. So at the moment you can't, but but we are in the process of approving a new ethical compromise, which every public institutional people of Podemos, every deputy, every president, every mayor would have to sign. And there are tens of proposals, but I've read some of them, and I remember reading a point about revoking. I think that the main idea is that the revoking should happen in the same electoral, how do you say in English, area, or in the same group of people that chose you. So if you have been voted by the whole nation, such as a member of the European Parliament, then the revoking process should be carried in the whole nation. Everyone should vote. There are different proposals about how to initiate the process. Some people say that you need 10% of the census to grant the initiation of the process. There are many proposals, but I am sure that in some months there will be in place an effective revoking mechanism, and we will also sign that document, of course. Because I had to read the ethical compromise I signed some months ago, sincerely, because I didn't remember it, because every point was reasonable. So when I read it, I said, okay, this is fine. I would have done this even if there is not an ethical compromise. So I think that with the new one will be the same situation. For a normal person like you or me, the new ethical compromise that we are drafting will be reasonable. It's only not reasonable for the present governing class. They won't sign that. But every one of you, including myself, has no problem in signing what we are going to write, and I am sure there will be a revoking mechanism in that document.
Thank you, Pablo. We are 1 minute to 6, but we started 10 minutes late, so I propose we have 10 minutes more. So there were already some hands raised, and sorry if we cannot take all of you. I see 3, and before the lady wanted also, right? So we get this 4, or I see 5. Okay, 5 very quick, please, and then we give 2 minutes each of our guests to reply. Okay.
I want to ask you one question, because in this discussion that we have had, I understand that like the most important challenge for Podemos now is to be near by the people and to have power from the people. But then, from the experience of Latin America, where I come from, I feel that this is like the first stage. You have to have enough power from the people to build a movement. But then there is a second one that is really important. That is how you are going to face the political system, the market that has conquered our democracies, and the powers that are in fact being part of the democratic system in the modern societies. I feel that the be a movement that is strong with the people is important, but it is not the only thing that you need to face those problems and to face those powers that are very, very strong for now, at least. So I want to ask, which other things do you have in mind to do in the future, because I think that you are gonna be, I think that you are gonna be a big movement, and that you are gonna be able to win elections, because there is a grievance in Spain, and when there is a grievance, you are gonna have a lot of people with you, but then you have to have a lot of capacities to build this other stage.
Thank you. There.
Just a few comments, questions. One is in relation to the how are different classes, I mean people from different classes, so from the middle class, from workers, from unemployed, how are they developing a common voice within the circles that you mentioned, you know, the Podemos circles? That's one. The second one is, I'm a bit surprised, or maybe I misunderstood you, that you are thinking already, in a sense, how to structure these circles. And I was thinking that probably one of the best things Podemos has done is really to create the space where the circles were generated, you know, and that this kind of outburst of creativity from the grassroots really needs to thrive for some time before it kind of decides how to organize itself, you know. That's a second comment. And my third one is, I mean, we're all very inspired, actually, by the struggles in Spain, I mean, since 2008, but also now with this emerging Podemos. And I myself am quite involved in struggles in relation to refugees and migrants in Europe. And I'm wondering how, as Podemos, you're tackling that question, and if you have something to share with us on that. Thank you.
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you. I would basically want to ask Pablo about how is it working, the conference with other left parties in Europe, and if he sees room for putting an alternative at European level, because as we have, as the moderator and Justus have said, Podemos is a very Spanish thing, and and their movements, Podemos, Syriza, Bloco de Esquerda, and then you have to stop, because with significance to change things, it's the only ones. So how does he see that? Because I read some comments from Pablo Iglesias that maybe the symphony with the German left, for instance, that they are in another wavelength, so to say. And in case that there is no room at European stage to put an alternative to neoliberal policy, if you are thinking, if in the organization there is some thoughts of getting back to the national levels, where there is actually a democratic space, where things are debated, where there's not these lobbyists that know everything and people that know nothing about what's happening, even though that involves going against the current common sense in Spain, which is pretty Euro-based, even though all the austerity policy. See, and I think that's
okay. We have two more there in the back.
I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the technological tools that you use. I know you've talked a little bit about the app that you mentioned, but I'm just curious, I mean obviously not without going into loads of technical detail about it, how you strike a balance, well, whether you made your own tools, whether you developed things for yourselves, versus using existing things that are maybe made by for-profit companies or organisations with other motives, and also how you've used them to enhance the democracy in Podemos, and how you've avoided some of the obvious pitfalls that we all encounter when trying to do politics on the internet or discussing political points with other people on the internet.
So what I would like to address was, for example, I do believe that there is an imbalance between so within the European Union, and it is seen actually in the south compared to the north, at least in a sense. So basically, do you also foresee, for example, that there could be some alternative union for other countries that at the moment they're subjected to austerity? And this is a bit of a follow-up from the girl from Latin America, where they did such an experiment with the ALBA union.
Great. Yes, so we are done with questions. Ya está, ¿no? Okay, vamos a Pablo.
Yeah, in order. The first thing about what the problems will be when Podemos wins the elections, because I think we will win them. And I mean, we will have to face them, because when I knew that I was going to be a European parliamentary, I couldn't do anything about it. So I mean, you are a European Parliament, now you have to go to Brussels, right? And you cannot do anything about it. So we are going to win, and we will not able to be able to do anything about it. So we have to be responsible and to put in place a government that improves the lives of the people. Otherwise, we will feel sorry and ashamed for the rest of our lives. So that's a must. And yes, it will be very difficult, because the economic elite won't be happy by a lot of things that we are going to do, and they will react, that's for certain. Possibly some discussions with the economic powers will have to happen. It's impossible to change the whole productive model from during the night. So yes, we will have to talk with everyone, but still, as I said, again, I think that there is room for political will. When the social democrat government in Spain told us that the only way out of this mess is to change the constitution and put in it a shameful article which says that the first thing to do is to pay the debt, and only when you have paid the debt you can spend in social services. When they told us that it was the only way out, that's a lie. One clear personal character of our governing class is that they are cowards. They are cowards. So when some strong power comes and says, do this or face the consequences, they always say, or most of the times say, okay, I will do what you say. And we will not do that. We will be brave. That doesn't mean that things will be easy. Things will be difficult, but from a different starting point. Not from cowardice, but from braveness and audacity. And also I think that the economic situation in Latin America is very different from the conditions in Spain. Possibly in Latin America, no matter what the government did, the economic basis of the country didn't allow everyone to live a decent life from the very first day of the mandate. But I think that in Spain that's simply not true. I think that in Spain, if you do a slight redistribution of wealth, then everyone can live a decent life because the economy is different. So I think that the problem in Latin America is much more difficult than the problem in Spain. Spain is richer, a lot of times richer than Latin American countries. So it's in that sense we have the wealth that we need to have in order for everyone to live a decent life. I think that the economic problem is easier in Europe, much easier. That doesn't mean that they won't react. They will react, but in a different way. Then the woman in the back, he asked me about the classes, in the different classes, how they are represented in the circles. I think that the present representation is not perfect. I think that Podemos has been able to get to middle class, educated people, mostly, and I think that we have to do a great effort in order to get to working class people and other type of people which we doesn't seem to be having a lot of success. Maybe they will vote for us, but I would also like that they come to the assemblies and participate and put ideas, because I think that without them we will not do things right. We will make a lot of mistakes. You also asked me about migration. I am myself a migrant. I came from Argentina to Spain. I was born in Argentina. And I think that what Europe is doing to migrants is shameful. I am shamed every time I see what happens in the border between Spain and Africa, in Ceuta and Melilla. And again, all the neoliberal voices tells you that if you open the borders or if you are more humane with the migrants, then it's the beginning of the apocalypse, and chaos will suddenly appear in your society, and I don't think that's true. I mean, I still have to see a proof that prediction is true. So yes, it will be the apocalypse. Okay, show me a report. I want to see that report which says that if we stop beating people in the border, things will be worse for everyone. I don't think that's true, and I think that this feeling in Podemos is widely shared. So I think we are one of the most progressive forces, probably the most progressive force regarding the rights of migrants. We think that people have to have rights only for living in a place, not for being from somewhere or being born from certain parents. Or yeah. And there was a third question you asked. Would you please remind me?
Yes, it was a question about the rapid. Maybe I misunderstood you, but
yeah, I remember.
A question about changing maybe the character of the South.
I remember. Yeah, of course. We don't want to put down the spontaneity of the movement, and I think that's very important. And in fact, in the proposal that I and my team have written, we say that for circles with less than 500 members, which is a lot of them, we suggest that they decide their own organization. But from 500 members upwards, we think that in order for better coordination with the rest of the movement, is desirable to have a certain homogeneous type of organization, which in any case is very light. I mean, we are proposing that there is a citizen council, and practically that is the only internal piece of organization that we are proposing, so it's very lax. There are two more questions. A question about the relation with our mates in Europe. Yeah, I think that Podemos is not only innovative in Spain, in the Spanish stage, but also at the European level. I think that we, for good and for bad, we are doing things in a very new way. So I don't see parties in Europe that are methodologically the same as Podemos or close. In terms of the program, yes, there are a lot of them. In any case, it's very difficult to say. I think that these parties that already exist, they are our natural allies, and we have to talk with them, and we are talking with them. The other day we had a very interesting meeting with the whole Syriza delegation in the parliament. We were talking like, I don't know, 2 hours about politics, and very, very interesting meeting. And we think that we have to do things together with them. But maybe maybe by looking at Podemos, maybe some of these parties can begin an internal change, because I think that some of the things that we are doing are effective. And I perceive the interest in the European Parliament. They look at us with curiosity. So yeah, I think that maybe some of these parties need to start thinking about changing the way they do things. And if that doesn't happen, maybe someone in these countries need to start a new Podemos movement. I mean, sometimes the answer is not in the parties which already exist, and this is what happened in Spain. So why not in some other place? And your question, comrade, I don't remember it.
Mine was that. I think the other
last one
is possibility of.
You talk about the technological tools. No, but the mate in the back, he asked me about the European Union. You right? The guy with the long hair.
Yeah,
You asked me about the European left.
Yeah. And what did you ask me?
Me too, and in a sense that the left or the popular movements like Podemos might reach a stage where power is enough in Spain to change things at the national level, but not at the European. At how to deal with
the question about going out of Europe. Yeah. I think that Europe is an impressive dream, and I think that we should fight for keeping it, because as many things, they have stolen the dream of Europe from normal people. The basis of the dream is great. I always say that when the parliament was inaugurated in the 1st of July, and there was an orchestra there, and we were for the first time in the plenary room, and they were playing the 9th Symphony of Beethoven. I felt I was intensely emotive about that moment, because I thought, this is big. This is big. They have stolen the European institutions from the people. But I think that the initial dream is impressive, is massive. So we have to strive to get it back. But I think that our first item on the priority list should be the well-being of our people. So if we see that at the European level it's impossible to achieve the well-being of our people, maybe we'll have to start speaking about leaving the European Union. So, I mean, there is nothing above the well-being of our people in the priority list. Not the euro, not Europe, not anything. Not the debt, for example. Okay, so yes, we will try to keep the European dream, because I personally think it's a nice dream, but that shouldn't be our top priority. That should be a sine qua non. That's my opinion. And about the technological tools, yeah, we have started to use the tools that already exist, because we are small, we have a small budget, and we are very new. But I think all the time that we should design our own technological tools. Especially, we think that I think that when votations start to be about such massive issues as, I don't know, not paying half of the public debt of Spain, we have to be sure that we ask the question to the people using an open source software which can be audited and which everyone can be sure that the process is fair and that there is no mistake in it whatsoever, not only because I think open source is in general a better solution for developing software, but also for the transparency point, which is when you are taking decisions that could affect the life of 45 million people, then you have to be extremely transparent, and you cannot use software which is not open and which the code of the software cannot be seen by anyone. So yes, I think that we have in Podemos to develop our own tools, and I am confident that we will do so in the future. But of course we will need resources, and for that we will ask money to the people through crowdfundings. I don't know, but I don't think that we have the resources at the moment for doing that, but I hope that we will have the resources to do that in the future.